Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Anne.
Today we're taking a look at Dice Settlers.
Dice Settlers is brought to you by NSKN Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and lasts about 25 minutes per player.
All right, let's go see who can be the best pioneer and dominate the land.
To set up the game, you're going to organize all of the components by the similar types. Each player is going to take 1 card for tracking their dice, 3 white dice, 1 green, and 1 yellow. These will be their starting dice pool. You'll also take 5 of the small cubes in your color, which are going to represent your tints throughout the game.
Right.
And 1 of the cubes you'll also place on that dice tracking card. You'll typically start with 3 unless your starting tile gives you some extra.
Which happens frequently because, again, we'll talk about in a minute, but those tiles you get a draft. So you have high potential of getting some extra dice to start.
Yeah, and throughout the game, you're going to have more or less dice that you'll be drawing, and that's not necessarily the number that's in your bag. You could always have extra in your bag.
Yep.
But that's what this card is great for tracking. You look out there, see how many dice you get this round, move it up or move it down.
Yeah. Also, you're going to set up a tableau of technology cards. First, you're going to separate each of the different types of technologies into separate piles, and you're going to shuffle them up and draw them randomly. And the thing that's nice about this is that it makes the game variable. You never know what technologies you're going to start with and what you're going to have available during the game, but you only have 9 per game.
Yeah, and some of the technologies are going to be easier to get, and some of them are going to be more difficult.
Right.
So you can tell at the top how many lantern icons you need, which are going to be coming from your dice.
Right.
But you also may need 1 or multiple types of tiles as well in order to even get that technology.
And some of these technologies, you have to have everything basically. All the research tokens, you have to have like 4, and you have to have land or tiles of every single type. So it really varies. And I think the way they have them sorted too is that they do have basically the starting cards are easier, and it kind of moves down the list, or out of the 9 that you have to sort, it really goes from easy to more difficult. So it's something that's really a neat, unique thing about this game is that it keeps it variable and very different every play.
Next, we're going to set up the tiles. To do this, you'll play the game with a certain number of tiles, depending on the number of players. And each tile has a number marked on it, and it'll tell you which ones you need to remove for lower player counts. You'll find the first 7 tiles, and those are going to be your starting tiles for the game. So the very first player will pick 3 and choose 1 to keep. The next 2 will go on to the next player, who will add a new tile and pick 1 of those 3, and so forth. You'll continue this draft until every player has 1 starting tile.
Yep.
And as you put these out, you'll want to make sure that after you put the first 2 down, that every tile is touching on at least 2 sides, and then each individual gets to take their starting bonus from that tile and place 1 of their tints on their tile.
Yeah, so like one of the starting bonuses, like we said, could be that you get extra dice in your bag to start. So then you would move your dice pool card, you'd move their token up by 1 there. But the interesting thing is there's a lot of different things that could happen with these tiles, right? You could have extra resources, all kinds of potential neat things here.
Yep, and you can also use this to look at the tableau and kind of plan for the future of, maybe what technology card do I want to get that might decide what land I'm going for first.
Indeed. All right, now play can begin. And what you're going to first do is look at your dice pool card. How many dice do you get? You randomly pull that number out of your bag, and then everybody rolls simultaneously. Now, there's a special icon. There is a pioneer icon. Looks like a hat, and this allows you to do re-rolls, but you can only re-roll up to 3 of your dice.
Unless you have the adaptability card, which allows you to re-roll as many dice as you'd like.
This is true, and it's a really powerful technology card.
It's also pretty easy to get, so it's a good one for the beginning.
It's a lower count, right? It's just 1 research, right?
Yep, that's it.
So the other thing to note about the Pioneer, again, is that if you have 2 Pioneer, you might want to hold on to those, because 2 acts like a wild. It can be any icon.
All right, once all players have decided which dice they're keeping, or are stuck keeping their dice, they're going to move them all to the very top of their card. And from there, we're going to start taking action. So the first player will take the first action. And the thing to note here is that every player is going to get 2 actions. Everyone will get one action going around the table, and then everyone get a second action going around the table.
Right.
And during the first action and then the second action, none of the actions can be the same, at least of the primary main actions.
Yes.
There are some secondary things you can do.
They're freebies. Basically.
Yeah, freebies. So if you were planning to research and someone in front of you has already researched, you'll have to wait till the second action and hope that no one else does that.
Before you. Yes.
Yeah. So you kind of make this plan, but then you got to also play in order based off what your options are.
I think that's pretty neat too, right? You're like, oh man, just needed to do that, and you have to switch your strategy up and figure out it's something else to do this turn.
Yep. And so you'll take all your dice and you'll put them at the top. And then once you do an action and you've used your ice, you're going to move them to the very bottom of your card. And this will mark that those
have been used.
Yeah, have been used. Those dice for those actions. And then later is when you'll end up putting them back in the back.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at the actions that we have available with our dice. The first one is going to be how to acquire more dice, which is hiring someone.
Yes.
Now, one thing to note here is that all of the dice correspond in color to the tiles that are out there. So in order to hire someone, a dice, you have to have a tent or a house present on one of those tiles on the map. So when you start out, if you have a tent on green, then the only option for you to hire is a green dice.
Correct.
Now, I do want to point out here, we'll say this again, but everything that you see here is in prototype form.
Absolutely.
So these dice have stickers on them. We are just, place testing as the Kickstarter is going. So check the Kickstarter page for what final products are going to look like.
Indeed.
You can spend one higher dice to hire one additional dice, or you can spend more to gain additional ones. So if you have three higher dice, then you're able to hire 2 new dice.
Right.
And 6 dice would let you get 3 new ones.
Yep.
So this is really great also. At first I was like, why would you do that?
Yeah, why would you do that, right?
But since you only get 2 actions per turn, if you have
That's
the dice,
why you would do that,
you'll get more for it,
Yeah, exactly. Now the next icon is the Explorer icon. And I really like this part of the game. So it basically allows you to pull tiles and place them into the bigger pool of people exploring this world. However, if you have multiples of the Explorer icon, then you get to pull that many tiles and you get to choose, which is really nice. Because if you just have a single one, yes, it's still worthwhile doing, but having that choice also speeds up the game, because when the tiles run out, that's one of the game end triggers. So that might be a strategic play, like, oh, I have 6 Explorer icons. I'm going to take 6 tiles, pick one, and discard 5. So you could really speed up or end the game by doing that kind of thing, which is pretty slick. Okay, so once you place your tile, one of the things you have to do is have that tile touch 2 separate tiles. It has to fit in there somehow, if possible, that is.
And it also has to be touching one that you already have a tent on.
You already have a tent on, correct. Now, the tents, let's talk about those real quick. There is a general pool of tents, as well as the 5 that you start with. You who are exploring, when you place your tile, you get to pull one from the general supply. However,
those are kind of like freebies. Like, they don't cost you anything
they don't
to get
at all,
more of those.
Right?
They're just there.
It's a great way for exploring. However, the person that you're touching, the tile is touching, where their tent is, they have the option then of placing a tent from their personal supply on the tile as well.
If they have one.
If they have one. But that also means that you can place one from your personal supply, so it's like one-upping each other, right? So you have put one out from the general, Anne's going to put one out. I'm like, oh man, now I got to put a second one out. So there's no longer a tie on this tile, because you want to have the majority for either the victory points that are on this tile down the road, or for doing the actions or having the extra dice or whatever it might be.
All right, next up is settling. And this is how you build up that personal supply.
Yes, indeed.
So you have 3 options when you settle. You can take 1 tent from the general supply and put it in your personal supply. You can take 1 tent from your personal supply and put it out on the map, so long as you're touching an adjacent area. Or you can take a tent from the map back into your personal supply. One thing to note, houses can never be taken back. Once they're on the board, they're there for the rest of the game.
Indeed. And then you have the raid icon, which is the muskets or the firearms. And basically this is a big take that action. You're going to be using those icons to replace people on the map
Kick them off.
Kick them off, basically. They're out of there. So it's really basically that. And however many guns that you roll, you'll just be able to manipulate, and anywhere you have presence, you'll be able to affect other people on those tiles.
And those go back to the personal supply
Yes,
as well.
they do. That's good to note, because initially we thought, oh man, you just lose these? No, you get to keep them, so that's pretty nice.
Which every now and then can actually work out to your advantage if you kick me off and then I can follow you later.
Right.
So you kind of got to pay attention to how someone's personal supply of tents is running. All right, next up is harvesting. And these are the goods that you'll find on the dice. There's wood and apples, gold, and the anvil for metalworking. And so you take essentially what you see on your dice and collect them. Now, you can also trade, which is the handshake icon. And
this is pretty slick.
Yeah, this is turning in those goods that you've been working on collecting for victory points.
Yep.
So if you trade in 3 identical resources, you will get 6 victory points. 3 different resources will give you 5 victory points. 2 different resources for 2 victory points. And then finally, you have the option to return a die for 3 victory points.
Right.
This is kind of a way to thin out your deck.
Yes,
those dice are just removed from the rest of the game.
I really like that, actually. You're like, especially if you get some of those gray dice where you're trying to raid, then you can, I want to get those dice up quicker. So this is a great mechanism for that, All right, and then you have the research icon. And all the technology cards require this research icon. And it's the first thing you have to have, so that's the action you're going to perform. However, like we said, so many of these technology cards require so much more than just research. You might have to have tokens on every type of terrain type and so on. So that really is the goal here, is to get as much of this technology that can aid you as you're moving along through the game. All right, now there's some free actions that you can perform as well.
And these don't require any dice. So.
Exactly. And they also don't require that someone has not done them already. Anybody can do these at any time. And there's not a special order for them. You can just activate them.
They're free.
They're free, right. So the first one is the factories. So there's factories on these cards, and if you choose to pull your tent off, then you can activate the factory. And the factories are going to do various things. You get victory points, you get different supplies, and so forth. So there's many, many things going on here.
Yep. And then your other free action choice is to govern. And to become the governor of an area, this is how you're going to get your house on the board. You put a house in an area where you have 5 tents. Yeah. But the catch here is that no one else can have more than 2 tents. Yeah. So you could get into a race. If you get 3 or 4, then I have to have, more than you.
Now, there's gold tokens as well that you can use these gold tokens as any good, which is basically a wild, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, the pioneer icons, every 2 can be used as any dice face.
Yep, and you also have extra icons that are going to be on the tiles and on the technology cards.
Right.
So let's say you roll 2 of the fire icons, but you may have an extra one for your tile, now you have 3, or an extra one from the technology, now you have 4.
Right.
So there's a lot of manipulation that goes on. There's a lot of things to pay attention to, but that's kind of where the power is figuring out, I'm going to have a little of this and a little of this and a little of this and combine it all together and take over the world.
That's right. All right, now the cleanup phase. And what you're going to do here is any dice that you have not used on any of your actions, as soon as everybody is done performing actions, that is, they will move to the bottom of the card except for 1.
You get to keep 1.
You get to hang on to one for that next round. Now, all these dice go to the bottom. And in the next round, when it says for you to pull 4 more dice from the bag, if you only have 2 left, then you pull those 2, and all the ones that have been used will go back in the bag for you to grab your additional 2.
Yeah, but if you have enough in your bag for the number you need to draw, then those other ones just stay at the bottom of the card until you actually need them.
Which is another reason why you want to thin out those dice if you have the more important ones you need to get to more frequently. All right, so the game ends with, there's numerous ways the game can end, actually. Yeah. So when your tiles run out, there are no more terrain tiles to place out on the board, the game will end. Also, if you run out of victory points from the general supply, then that triggers the game end as well.
Or if 2 of the dice color options have run out and they're no longer available. Or the last game end condition is if 1 player has all of their houses out on the board.
Right.
So as soon as one of those happens, then you're going to move into the final scoring.
Yep. So then the game ends, and it's time to total up your victory points. After all, it is a victory point salad, right?
It is. There's so many different ways to get victory points. You get victory points from the map tiles themselves, from the technology card. You get victory points for the number of dice that you have as well. So maybe you don't want to thin out your dice pool too much. You also get victory points for houses that are on the maps. And you basically add all these up, and whoever gets the most points wins.
Yep. All right, folks, just a reminder again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview. Everything you've seen here has been in prototype form.
Don't forget that.
Yes, indeed. So make sure you keep an eye on the campaign for any changes that may occur. And, you know, with that said, there's definitely some neat things about this game. I really like the decision making and the engine building that's going on, and I'm a big dice fan, so that's right up my alley.
Yeah, and I really liked that there were so many different options and ways to think about things. Like, it felt really thinky as far as I'm rolling and I'm re-rolling and I want this, but I've got that, and I can use gold for this, and I can use pioneer hats for that.
Right.
And so that kind of surprised me from a dice game, which maybe not everyone's into, but it was an interesting mechanic for sure.
Like I said, a lot of decisions and a lot of going on.
Yeah,
So that's
lots of victory points.
A lot of victory points. Lots of ways to get victory points
Yeah.
too, right? So there's just a lot of options in this game. So anyway, if this looks like a game that might be of interest to you, I'm sure they would appreciate your support. So I think that's it from us. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.